well, I'll just start the recording now. So my plan with this, the recordings here is eventually in the next months to edit things down a little bit and clean up the recordings so they can be something that can be a useful resource for you. Welcome, Catherine, Melanie. Yeah, last week my energy was very low. Immediately after our gathering, it felt like somebody just pulled the plug and all the water rushed out. And then I was on the couch for 2 days with a nice head cold. Yeah. Oh. Well, I knew it was coming. I had it. My nephews were visiting the weekend before, and I got coughed on a lot as he was recovering from his cold. So I knew it was coming. And so that's still yeah, I'm still the phlegm. So I started chanting a bit yesterday for the first time to hear what the phlegm is doing. So it's working. It's working its way around. Okay, so let me switch this around there. There we go. So I thought I just wanted to begin by sort of summarizing. So this is our last session together on this topic. And, I'd like to hear from you guys as well after we sort of summarize what we've done. So I know as you go through a session like this, from my experience of being with Mirka too, that the weeks kind of run together and you sort of forget what was there. So one of the things I did for Mirka was summarize things for everybody before the calls, and we found that really helpful. And I was digging through I have a pile of documents that I've been privy to receive from Mirka in the years we've been together, as I sort of have digitized some of her archives. And I knew this was sitting somewhere, so I found it today. And it's essentially a summary of what we've gone through in the past 6 weeks together. But it's a summary from Desikachar. And let me remove the spotlight and see if I can share my screen here. So one of the things that Desikachar really liked to do was to really simplify things. And so, what took me like, 6-7 hours over 5 weeks, he did in a half a page with just a nice little picture. And it's essentially sort of where we came from. And it was nice for me to come upon this after putting this material together for you guys, because I find it really sweet that we can find affirmation of the realizations we come to, in that other humans have found very similar ways of expressing an experience or a process. And we like to be individuals. We like to feel that we're very unique and special and different, but at the same time, we are fully human. And I think it's really important to remember how, all of the spiritual traditions remind us how much community is part of what we do. And when we find so many people writing and sharing things like we have shared together, it doesn't take away from our individuality, but it does reaffirm the very specialness of our humanity and how we share that with everybody here. And so he used this image of a bird for teaching many different ways of putting information together. And this is part of his teachings with the 5 kosha model. And this one was focused on the personality. I have to go back through the notes to go a little bit more into this. But the center of the bird, the heart of the bird, is yoga. And he translated yoga as the state of mind, present, alert, and relaxed. So this is a balance of the 3 gunas. And I'll send this to all of you, so you don't have to worry about catching every word. So the state of mind with the gunas balanced, and it's a place from which we can understand the truth. And having understood, communicate that truth appropriately. So if we come back to the first week we had together, I shared the words of Navtesh Yohar, who spoke of a restlessness that arises when there's a disconnect between what we experience and how we express that experience. And this restlessness can drive us as artists of our own lives to find a way of expressing ourselves. And what he has here as truth with a capital T is like last week, what we called the silence behind the sound. So that's the concept of something deeper than the physical and intellectual experiences we have. And he calls that truth with a capital T. And the head of the bird here, what's leading us forward, Shraddha, so faith, confidence, conviction. For those of you who've been online with Mirka, with Lota, we've come back to this many times in the online community together, Shraddha and Virya, so strength and faith, confidence. And I think it's important here that he mentions that this faith or this confidence leads us forward into action. So there's a concept that it's not just about this inward experience, but how this inward experience manifests itself in our lives, which is, I'm a very practical person in whatever I do. I'm always looking for, how it's related to the bigger picture. And the confidence gives us that capacity to step into the world with whatever it is that we're finding. And then balancing out this bird is Satyam and Ritham. So Satyam, he translated as the ability to communicate that which we recognize as our truth, which I think, he's quite good at really putting the meat of things together. So there's Satyam is not just truth in this model. It's an ability to communicate what we recognize as our truth. So there's many layers of that. It's not talking about truth as a definitive thing, but our ability to communicate something we recognize. So our flaws are kind of built into there, that this is an iterative process, that this may be how we recognize truth in this moment, which may or may not be the same as it is in another moment. And then that is balanced with Ratham, which is our ability to recognize the harmony of things. Coming back to Catherine's words a few weeks ago, when you brought in the Buddhist teachings of, is it enough to be who we are? Be like the tree, and in the tree, we recognize that harmony. And as, for those of us who live in climates where there's a big change with the seasons. So in Hawaii, there's also changes, but maybe not as dramatic as Sweden or Germany or North America. You really see, particularly autumn, for me, autumn every year touches me, it's this very dramatic change. It's not like it's unexpected, but there's still this joyful change that happens through every year. And if we use that image of the tree that Catherine brought in, a tree begins as a seed and as a sapling and as a larger entity that stands not only alone, but through the roots and through the fungi in the forest is communicating with the larger body. And when it's time to move on, its body becomes food for the next generation. So this idea of harmony of all things is to recognize that in this inherent harmony is also inherent change. And so truth that we can see at this moment, balanced with the harmony of all things. And this today reminded me of an ongoing discussion I'm having with a mentor of mine, that he watched a talk I gave a couple weeks ago on the nature of science. And he's a physics professor, retired physics professor in Philadelphia, who was really my first mentor. And in spite of himself, he's a spiritual mentor. He doesn't see himself as that, but he really is. And something I said in the talk was the nature of science is change. And he said, he would say the nature of science is progress, because science is always in service of humanity and it's intended to move us forward. But I think what Desikachar here captures the subtlety of what I mean by that. You know, upon hindsight, we can look at the progression of something like medical science or physics or, you know, whatever field, and we can see a progression from, you know, hundreds of years ago to now, you know, improved health and understanding a little better how to prevent sicknesses, things like that. But that's in hindsight. At any given moment, progress may not look like progress. It may look like regression, because progress is a relative concept. And in any given moment, we have to have the capacity to respond what's here. And in any given moment, that may look like we're kind of taking a few steps back. But in the future, 20 years from now, we may look back and recognize that step backward was actually a step forward. And so I think that relativism here is something that Desikachar expresses really beautifully in this balance between harmony and our recognition of truth. Both things change with time and require us to be attentive, like the flapping wings of the bird. And then the tail of the bird, so really the part of the model that gives us direction is what we spend a bit of time connecting with. The Mahat, the collective of all of our conditioning that impacts our attitude, our perceptions, and our behavior. So this pre-programmed aspects of ourselves is really what determines our direction. And so as we turn towards the concept of personal practice, we cannot disengage ourselves from our pre-programming. It's understanding and accepting and being with this pre-programming that allows us to choose the direction in which we're flying. And for each of us, this predisposition will be different. And therefore the direction chosen for our practice will be different. And this is really the heart of the Vinyasa approach, is recognizing this. So, you know, in one half-page image, this is essentially what we've discussed in the past 6 weeks. And I'll send this to you once we finish our call here. And so I just wanted to, I'll pin myself here, there we go. I just wanted to ask you guys a little bit about sort of what has stuck with you over the past few weeks, sort of what sticks out in your mind. And we'll just have sort of a general discussion along these ideas. What sticks out in your mind, and looking at your own practice, because each of you on some level or another has an understanding of this idea of practice, whatever we think of it. You know, as my practice evolves and changes with time, you know, there's a few things that are sort of my gems, like things that I come back to. And they're usually the short things that always kind of flavor larger practices. It can be a thought, it can be a realization, or sometimes a particular movement. You know, we all have our bodies. We often come back to the same things. And I'd like to hear from you if you have something that sort of has stuck with you over time, even as your practice changes. I would love to hear what that is, and learn a little bit from you, sort of which jewels, which tools in your yoga work belt have served you over and over again. And you know, we just, you know, share however you'd like to share, and we can just go from here. So I won't have a, you know, formal one person at a time. Just whoever would like to share, please feel free to your microphone and let us know what you think.
Well, I always like to talk, so I can start.
I always want Lotte in my groups because she starts everyone off.
Somehow the Wednesdays and these Tuesdays have melted together in my memory, so I'm not really sure what's inquiry yoga and what's the other yoga. Mm-hmm. But two things. Even if to always bring my breath with me, even if I don't have the concentration to do very advanced practices or really think what practice do I have to do, just start the breathing and the rest will come. And something you said, that feel your energy, like if you have a lot of energy, do the, vividly do the movements, or if I'm low in energy, just make them soft and more like Qigong, and that suits me so great. So not very advanced things, but very meaningful to me. And I don't know from what classes.
Those are two really important points. And that softness for you has been an important thing that you've shared in the last year and a half in particular, as we really got to know each other better through the Corona times, in this connection. So yeah, and you having that feedback from you has brought it to my other classes as well, to offer that softness to people so they can remember that they can have that gentleness when they need it.
And I've been very much into this Chinese medicine, Qigong breathing, where you work the breath down. But this class sequences, I've been doing this the other way, like you told us, to follow the breath out and up and yet to relax. And it worked really fine. So just at the moment, I like that better. So I can switch different methods. Did I freeze, Rose?
You cut out a little bit there, but I think I'm just going to repeat in case I misunderstood. But I thought you were saying that you normally focus on sort of bringing the energy down, but this session also supported this idea of bringing the energy up.
Yeah,
and
bringing the energy.
Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, and breathe out without breathing out and thinking upwards without, thinking that upwards is raising the energy, just to like the opposite, and to relax here while breathing out and relax in the pelvis the other way. And that's really great.
And I don't remember if it was this class or the Wednesday class where someone was saying, maybe it was you who said that emphasizing the exhale lifted the energy up, but not in an irritating way. So it was energizing the calm energy. So maybe that's the difference for you. Exhaling while lifting up maybe helped to lift the calm energy and not create a sense of irritation or lifting. Okay.
Yeah, but it's still exploration.
Thank you, Lotte. That was very helpful. Anybody else?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit. When I looked through my notes and thought about the description that you had originally sent us, Tammy, and what really has stuck with me is from that very first session, how you talked about yoga as, or us as, being repairmen versus artists, and that we're not practicing yoga to fix something. And then I went back to your original description, remembering kind of what in that description had intrigued me so much. And, some of what I wrote down from that is that, we have this impression that our practice determines our ideals. And that's a source of conflict and perpetual disappointment in many traditional yoga classes. And I think there's really a lot to that statement. And I understand why, the whys behind that and how that happens over time in a structured yoga relationship. But it's interesting to me that maybe us being quarantined has opened up such new avenues to yoga teachers like yourself, and the ability for me to study with you. And that brings a whole different level of engagement and resource. And I think for whatever reason, some freedom from that conflict, or of that. And I don't know exactly how to describe it, except that I do think that builds up over time with your traditional yoga practitioners and teachers, when you sort of have one option, one way to do it. And this has opened up a lot. So I do think that concept of going from repairman to artist is a really major shift for me, and I'm grateful for that concept. So thank you.
Yeah. And we, as teachers today in the market of yoga, because it is a market, it is a business, that's the reality of this in the capitalist system. There's a pressure in the system to produce consumable content for people.
Yeah.
And so in the effort to, produce that consumable content, it can very easily become a dogmatic thing, that content is the real teaching versus a understanding of a teaching that's intended for a particular purpose. And I remember the story, I think it was Leslie Kaminoff told about Desikachar, when he would go to fly out there to spend some time in India with him. And he would ask when they would have their one-on-one sessions, which is how he taught most of his students. And when he would arrive, he would say something like, do you have any questions, or are we just going to gossip today? And, so he and Leslie said it took a lot of balls, because people would, fly around the world, spend a lot of money, and this guy would have nothing prepared. He was simply responding to what your questions were as a student. And and it's we're not really in a market for that, and understandable. People who are using yoga as a profession, they need to make money, and we have to sort of define ourselves. So that conflict, I think, just arises from this reality of how we're doing things. And
that's a really good way to put it.
It's an inherent, capitalism and yoga. There's an inherent conflict there. It doesn't, we're living within this structure. That's the reality of what it is. And so as we do in yoga, we see it. This is the reality of where we are, and we can see what games we have to play to survive within that thing versus where our ideals take us. That was a great way of expressing it, that questioning that idea that the ideals are determined by the practice rather than our ideals determining our practice. That's the root of it. Thank you. Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, wait, Lori, I think you're talking, but you're muted.
There we go.
There you
I
go.
have little stars by things, and I don't have a lot to say about them, but it's what has struck me. And the first one was actually what Jackie just said. It's that recognizing that the state of our nervous system is not to be fixed, but just to recognize that this is what's happening. And I think, we have a tendency to want to fix everything, that we want to, instead of just allowing it to be, we're just, at least I am, always in this fixing mode. And so that was good. And then this whole idea of being engaged, but not in control. And I think,
Oh,
and I
that's a
think
big one.
those things are actually pretty related. The fixing, the control, the, you know, all of that. And so, I've just been thinking about those things and how am I trying to fix and how am I trying to control and what can I let go of to just, move down that river rather than fighting it. And as you said, those are just a couple of things that I had highlighted and have been thinking about.
Those are good things.
And emotions need to be in motion. I loved that as well. Rather than this, let it flow. I
Emotions
mean,
need
it
to
really
be-
comes, emotions need to be in motion.
to
I
be in
remember that was
Yeah.
another thing that I had highlighted. So
That's great. Did I say, no, who said that? I don't think, did I say that?
I
I
said
don't know.
that.
Whoever said
I
that.
wrote it
That
down.
was a good, oh, you said that. That's
Yeah, but it was
brilliant.
Mirka. It was a quote from Mirka.
Ah, that sounds like Mirka. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah, and we when I was giving the science talk, the background of the invitation for the talk was, it's for the Democrats abroad, in the context of sort of misinformation and particularly with public health policy and things like that. And I must have gotten my point across because the last question that somebody asked afterwards was something like, so the real problem is people stuck in this constant state of fear. And in that state of fear, they're more easily willing to move towards a simple solution because it feels like they're fixing it, rather than allowing themselves to be in a space of deep and profound uncertainty and fear. A pandemic, at least with that as the science, it's quite scary. And I said, yeah, now you figured out like why I teach yoga. So yeah, that's a really massive part, is that letting the emotions be in motion and understanding our nervous system is the state of our nervous system can impact how we perceive reality. And yeah, that's a really important and like, we don't have to fix things, but we can change things, like the little bird is, the little head of the bird is guiding us towards action. And the clarity helps us consider what needs to change and what doesn't need to change. So it always comes back to the priorities. Thank you, Lori.
Mhm.
And you diminished a little bit your contribution by just your little points, but those were beautiful little points. So we have to recognize the little stars that don't seem that big. Like, that's it. Like, that's the good
Thank
stuff.
you.
Lindsay, I see your microphone's open.
Yes, it is. Well, it feels like I don't have that much to add because, it comes down to what we've been saying. But what I take away from this is really the softness and the allowing.
Hmm.
And it goes back to not trying to fix and what we've been talking about, and just being respectful of the clarity of an intention with what I'm doing, and just allowing whatever happens, and not just going to the mat and doing some asana. And what served me the most throughout my years of yoga is really the pranayama. And the other thing that I worked with a little bit this week, going back to the practice for the ringing in the ears. And that's going to be a real challenge, because I think over the years what I've tried to do with this is to not think about it, So I'm not bringing my mind to it. And I'm
Mm,
aware it's going on, but I'm not thinking about it. But when I'm doing that, I'm I'm hearing them ringing more. So it's going to take
mhm.
it's going to take some time for me to find that other pathway for it to go down and not really try to be focused on, am I hearing the ringing or am I not? And focus on
Mhm, mhm,
the sound that I'm hearing, like the ocean when I'm doing that.
mhm,
But
mhm,
this, I'm not as articulate, I don't think, as my friends are, but this has just really been a profound session for me. Just it's been amazing just to be able to come at a whole different angle of yoga and what we've been doing. So I
mhm,
thank you very much, and I thank everybody for their contributions, because that's really meant a lot to me. So I'm kind of
mhm.
wrapping up because I will have to leave early, but thank you.
Okay. Well, and thank you for your contribution, which was as beautiful and as informative as everybody else who's spoken so far. So thank you. And something you said triggered some thought, but it seems to be gone now. It'll come back.
May I reflect
Heather?
upon what you said?
Oh, yes, please, Lotta.
It was so beautiful when you said softness and allowance. And I was just sitting and thinking that this practice makes me feel so rich. And I think that was the spot on. Softness and allowance leads to this feeling of richness in practice, and ultimately to some kind of richness in my life experience, even if I'm just
Hmm.
being.
Wonderful.
I'm striving just to be being. That's what I'm trying to get to. Just being is
You're in good
fabulous.
company. Yeah. Oh, I remember what you reminded me of. You reminded me of something Mirka always says, with the ringing in your ear, to make friends with it.
Mhm.
And that's that was a big practice when I had acute anxiety, generalized anxiety. And that was a practice that Mirka brought me to this, because anxiety is something you want to run away from. It's very uncomfortable. And it was a nightmare, and it became a vision of meditation. And in this nightmare, I was in a farmhouse, and there was an old farmer trying to break into the house, and I was trying desperately to keep him out. And he was like blocking the windows. And then when I woke up, I knew that image was the image of the anxiety. And so it became a vision of literally a person that I could make friends with. And initially, through my visualization and meditation, he was too powerful. We couldn't be friends, but I could let him in my yard, to sit over there for a while. And it became this image of that. And like maybe a year later, it was in the year that there were the terrorist attacks in Paris. And it happened at night, just before bedtime, my time here. It happened in the evening. And as I was reading and seeing the news about what happened, I had a flash for a moment of the face of this person that embodied my anxiety. And I caught myself before I went into the cycle of anxiety. Because he was a friend at that point, and I saw the face of this friend, and it triggered in me a response rather than a reaction, rather than going down so it really brought home to me the depth of that teaching that Mirka gives, of making friends with something that's difficult for us to do. It doesn't mean loving it and it's wonderful, but it means having a relationship, because with that relationship, what was something that created aversion becomes something that is now one of your tools in the artistry of your life. And so I wish you a wonderful friendship with the ringing in your ears. And I hope it serves you well.
I mean, that's just such great advice, because when I'm not trying to be a friend with it or ignore it or what have you, I'm only giving it more energy to, to be there. So, yeah, it's yeah, thank you. That's a very good, helpful.
Thank you. Heather.
Yeah, I was listening to a talk by Jack Cornfield last night before I went to bed. And this was either a quote from him, or he often tells stories and quotes from others. And he was talking about silence and how it is something that we yearn for, and at the same time, it's something that we are afraid of. And that really resonated with me. And I think that is similar with stillness as well, to still our bodies, to still our thoughts. For some nervous systems, it can feel very uncomfortable. And I think that this last week, kind of unconsciously, has been a kind of a week of aversion for me. I'm not sure really what externally is going on, but I feel like I've been a little more checked out in general. I haven't been wanting to devote myself to my practice as much. I've been wanting to just binge on Netflix. And excuse me. And yesterday I woke up with a headache that developed into a migraine. And so I tried to take some ibuprofen. It didn't help. Then I went into my room and I laid down and turned on a guided yoga nidra session. And after half an hour, I came back out of it and the headache had mostly dissipated. There's a little bit in the background, but so yeah, I love that concept of we're not using yoga as a way to fix ourselves, but a way to nourish ourselves. And I think that that concept of absorbing nourishment is this lifelong practice for me. Yeah, I think it's really wrapped up with feelings of self-worth and this programming that we have. So I feel like I'm often struggling with this concept of low self-worth and the idea of self-sacrifice. And, with my young children, well, there's so many more important things I need to do before my practice, I'll turn on Netflix and I'll do the dishes. I'll turn on Netflix and I'll fold the laundry and just zone out while I do these menial tasks. So yeah, I'm grateful for those reminders of the self-care that's actually nourishing for me. There's self-care where you can let yourself kind of zone out. I think there's a time and a place for Netflix when we need just a little numbing, I guess. Yeah, and maybe this experience, this 5 days of trying to numb myself, and then the result that I feel from it kind of felt like it sapped me. It didn't feel this restoring. I didn't feel rejuvenated. So that can be, rather than what I usually think, or my critical mind is, thinking I relapsed or, haven't been a good yogi, something like that. It can just be my reminder, just a signal of, oh, here it is again, these feelings, and just this concept of returning again and again with the tools that I know are helpful. And breathing is a really big thing that I come back to again and again, and chanting the Gayatri mantra. Yeah, and these are simple things I can do whenever I think of them, and that can be helpful because I'm not always able in each moment to stop what I'm doing and put on a nice video, or even just put out my mat and do some asana or something like that. So yeah,
and look at the story too that you the judgment. So you had some days where you felt low energy, unfocused, and then you had a migraine. And so the attitude turns that behavior caused that problem. When, but as we get to know our bodies, it could be the body was telling me my migraine's coming. And I called myself whatever, as my body was saying, something's coming, watch out, and or as Mirka said to me once, as I was telling her about something, I said, yeah, and I was really lazy today. And she said, let's look at this word lazy. And I broke out laughing because that's the word I've used to hit myself over the head for decades. So just, your body, you have this beautiful nervous system that has carried you to where you are. You are alive with beautiful family, you are safe, you're here, and you have these coping mechanisms when your mind is in a certain state. And also your friends, these coping mechanisms, like you said, there's a place, they're there for you, they're doing something for you. And when we get lost in them, they can be a problem. But Netflix has been a great gift in this year of I'm not reading the news if I'm watching Netflix. That's a good thing. But yeah, so be gentle with your amazing nervous system, a very awake nervous system.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and I just wanted to say one more thing. I really appreciate this call and reminder to really apply the yoga philosophy to all aspects, and especially the inner workings of my mind. And when you were talking about how with capitalism and marketing ourselves as teachers, we have to make yoga into this product. And then I thought, that's so interesting to think of with social media, how now we've made ourselves, in a sense, into this product, just with this representative of ourselves on Facebook. And that just really struck me as I noticed myself when I use social media more. I tend to compare myself a lot to others. I tend to feel lonely, actually, and kind of left out in some senses. If we see a picture of friends having fun, and it's like, well, where was my invitation? Just it lets these insecurities really thrive. It can. That's one side of the coin. And so it's such a helpful reminder that we are not just what we put out into the world. We are not just our identity or how we've learned to identify. And also, it's so helpful to hear about the bird and our concept of what the truth is and how that changes. And rather than this concept of change, it can be progress. And that's really helpful. I live in a very rural area with a lot of people in my community that have different ideas about the virus, about masks and vaccines. And it can be challenging to have friendships where you have these real kind of differences of understandings. And so this has been so helpful for me to just relax my holding on to my idea of what's right and feeling like I need to, convince others of that to somehow validate my rightness. It just has been helpful for me to just be at peace with everyone and their variety, focus on what I can control, and and let others be as they are. So I don't want to take up any more time, but that's been really helpful.
No, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful and so important. For me, it's not my community, it's my parents. So that's no getting away from that. So I hear that. That's it's a big learning for all of us, that openness,
Mhm.
and all of the fear, and like Lori had guided to, and what my friend pointed out with the science talk, is that when we are in a state of fear, we're in a state of disconnect, and a state in which we can be easily manipulated. And and with social media, it's not a flaw that social media makes us feel this way. It's a feature. It was programmed, using people. People know how our brains work, who created the code that keeps us engaged. And these services are not free. We are selling ourselves. We may not be paying money, but we are our data and our it's almost an example of Catherine's idea of be a tree. You simply being in your life is a sellable product for social media. So it's in a way we could conceivably use this as a realization of this idea that social media is a multi-billion-dollar industry based on us existing and sharing that existence with other people. This was the Franciscan marketing method. Francis and his brothers were sent, he sent his brothers into the world, and he didn't tell them to convert people or teach them about Jesus. He told them to go and be with them. And in the Middle Ages, to wander joyfully about the wonders of life, they were madmen, but that was the idea: share your joy with the world. And he essentially decimated a whole class of people in the city of Assisi, where he's from. The children of the rich people left everything behind to join him, not because he was forcing them to believe a particular thing, but he was teaching them this joy and wonder of life. And it's what the concept of social media could be, but we are fearful beings stuck in our samskaras, and so instead we see that joy and feel lonely. And it is the future. Thank you,
Yes.
Heather.
I have a question for you about the farmer. Were you ever able to let the farmer in? How did that progress?
Yeah, well, we sit on a front porch swing together. Is what we do. Because the image of the house sort of dissolved, but the image of a porch swing. My parents in their home have a porch swing, and so that became sort of the image that we could sit on the porch swing. And he doesn't speak much, but we can be together in silence. So, and it's still an image. It's very clear in my mind. It's such a dear friend. Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Catherine or Melanie, would you like to share? So Melanie may not be there, her camera's off. Catherine, would you like to share any thoughts or comments or questions?
Yeah, so my reflection today is what this conversation is bringing me to today is not so much what I'm taking away from my practice of yoga, but what yoga has been in my life, or when in my life did yoga show up. And particularly in relation to this course, it's like, well, what is it about this moment that attracted me to this this offering? So yeah, so I don't know what if I have much to offer per se, because I'm in such an internal space at the moment. But,
that's beautiful. You don't have to share if you prefer to stay in in that space.
Yeah, but I think the only thing I do want to share is that like the way you've befriended your anxiety. Sometimes we could do that the same with the yoga and yoga practice itself. Because there is this, this practice can become a big word.
Yes, right.
That kind of triggers our kind of habitual behaviors around this is something that I have to do, and if I'm not doing it, so just working on that, I think right now.
That's a beautiful idea. Befriend your practice. Thank you, Catherine. And Melanie.
Yeah, I had to check on Nikolai, so I was away for a few minutes.
I figured.
I don't know if I can add something new because the things I heard were really important to me as well. But I thought of the two things I always take away when you do your lessons, and which came the last 6 weeks again and again, was one was the breathing, and at first, but the second one was, it was a thought. It was the thought, what do I need today? So, and not what is the emotion and where does it come from? So I usually do that a lot, but it's just a thought, what do I need today? So and yeah, allowness, I think that's a good word. Everything is possible, everything's there. So what do you need? If you know what I mean. My English is not that good.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. It's beautiful. Yeah, that's a.
And that thought came to me every day and more often, and so I tried to integrate it in the day, and always think of, okay, what do I need today? How can I get something of this into my daily routine, into the things that I have to do? So
yeah, and that's really important too, that we have to do certain things.
Yeah,
there's no getting around. And I think that's such, for me as well, that there was a reckoning that had to be made between those ideas, that there's some things that has to be done, and I still have my needs, and how those things come together is I think where the work really is, that's
yes.
Especially as those of us with young kids, Heather and you and me, and Lotta's doing version 2.0 with Tilda there, we see that so clearly with small children, because they have no agenda. They're just existing and expressing what they need, and can exhaust us and take from us, and we still need to give that on whatever level we can. And that question, I think, is like what Heather mentioned, noticing this low energy, or just not wanting to deal with things, and or like the way when I go into a cycle of what Heather described as, just wanting to be distracted. The question that I asked, very similar to yours, is now, what are you trying not to think about? That's usually for me, because there's usually something, or it's not even like sometimes I just don't want to be with the thoughts. And when I can ask that question that, you ask, like, what do I need? I realize those thoughts aren't as scary as my habitual behavior thinks they are. That, it's no longer the farmer trying to destroy my home. He might just be a little grouchy or something, And it's, you know, and just asking that question, it gives you the capacity to say, oh, wait, maybe this is something I can face, even though I don't feel like it today. But
Yeah, and
it's speaking it maybe.
yeah, and if it's distraction that's needed for the moment, it's okay, but you can give it an end. Yeah, you can say, okay, I do it for an hour or two, or today, and tomorrow is another day.
Oh, tomorrow's another day. That's a great. Those are the two phrases, I think, the beginning and end of yoga. First we begin again, and tomorrow is another day. So, so one of my clients, she got a message from me. She feels like she regressed after we did some sessions together, and I said, that's why we add the word again. We begin again, because we're all beginning again at every point. Every awakening, we have to do it again and again and again. Thank you very much, Melanie. So thank you, everybody. This has been a really important 6 weeks for me to speak. I think really for the first time with a group of people. The processes in my mind that go into how I approach these things myself, and having the invitation to share them with you allowed me to find them for myself sometimes for the first time, to speak and to write and to find them. So thank you very much for giving me that chance to lay out the unspeakable in my mind into a way that makes somewhat sense. And I hope it's a beginning, that's something that I can carry forward. And the resources of our time together will be there for you to use at whatever level you have, whatever time you have. YouTube, I've sold my soul to YouTube as well, one of the many social media platforms, and they let me keep my stuff up there in perpetuity. So it will be there. And if I can do some editing and clean things up a little bit, then I'll reload them up and give you all that information. So I have you all on a list to keep in touch. And if you haven't yet, go to YouTube and subscribe to my channel. And then as I add things, you'll get updates about that. So go ahead, Lori.
Oh, I just wanted to thank you, Tammy. This really has been a beautiful 6 weeks, and I hope you continue in some way, because I'm excited to continue.
I definitely will.
Working with you. So thank you.
We have some ideas as we move through winter, because it looks like, at least in Germany, it's pretty clear we're going to be doing a lot of online things in the coming months again. So for me, this has been a wonderful way to connect and be with people. So we will continue it.
Wonderful.
So thank you very much, so much. We'll be in touch and share. Yes, Lotta.
Just want to say that I find you very talented in bringing forward this philosophy of yoga. Very.
Oh, thank you very much, Lotta.
Agreed.
I'm glad you appreciate it. Thank you, ladies. We will carry it forward. And Jackie, I'm already considering how to approach yoga for hypermobile bodies.
Yay!
As another, yeah, I might even try to tag Leslie Kamenoff to do some theoretical work if he would be up for something like that.
Oh my gosh, that would be fabulous.
I've been his demonstrator of like elbows that bend backwards and things like that. So
well, here I can join in.
yeah.
Can those of us who are not hypermobile, but just the absolute opposite, still join in and learn?
Yes.
About our students who are hypermobile?
You can laugh at us.
Because you know the tightest person I know is the man I married.
Same with me. That's what our chiropractor says. You're the
perfect match.
Yeah.
Yes. So he has taught me tremendously about working with bodies at the opposite end of the flexibility spectrum. And but it's important for us to know, because we do almost the same movements. We both love the movements, but the pace is completely different. And so what works for what he has a tremendous workout with one pace, and for me it's like, okay, you know, it's nothing. And then when he does it the way I do it, it's a very different experience. So yeah, so yes, of course, everybody's welcome. And we will give extra attention to the hypermobiles, just so that you normally mobile people can understand the pain we're often living in.
Well, that really was, though. I mean, that was a life-changing fact just for me to learn that there is that name for it, and that there's, you know, cause other symptoms and effects, and because otherwise I've just learned it all on my own. So
but yeah, it's tremendous. And you know, if you use social media and are looking for you know, the extreme of hypermobility, there's a genetic disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of really funny memes from that community on hypermobility and joints popping out. But one thing that's very clear is that there are a lot of very hypermobile people living in a lot of pain, and going to a group yoga class is the worst thing that they could possibly do.
yeah,
And so it puts those people off of yoga, thinking it's just gymnastics that injures them.
yeah,
And but the reality is, you know, we all think our bodies are normal because it's like the only reference we have, really. And as being a yoga teacher has helped me see that my range of motion is not normal, because I demonstrate things. I've stopped demonstrating the way that I practice them because it looks very different for people. And but also the reality that there's a lot of people in a lot of pain who haven't figured out how to work with this range of motion that they have. And so some awareness is a really important thing. So it's not about doing the extreme, it's about doing the opposite. Good.
yeah. So thank you for
Okay,
that.
ladies, thank you again. And yeah, thank you so much. As the sun rises in Hilo,
Thank you, Tammy.
the sun sets in Germany and Sweden, from around the world. I feel you all. Thank you. Next time we'll be together again. But
Thank you.
next week, not this weekend, after Halloween, Mirka's doing her home retreat. So the Sunday online thing as well. So if you register, you'll get a reminder from me so that you show up. Okay.
But we
Goodbye.
see each other. We see each other
We see each
tomorrow.
other tomorrow. Yes.
Yeah,
I'll be
great.
on tomorrow. Okay. Bye.
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 Bye-bye.